Adversity. Anti-dragon life-changing blade invisible introduction. The young master blade who has traveled through the world and sealed the sword invisibly, unwilling to be the cheap father's endless night snack, nor willing to give the cheap third uncle a dull sword and send his head. After much thought, it seems that there is only one way to go, which is to change the life against the sky. My life is determined by me, and my days are controlled by me. Those who plan my own body will go against it. Those who deceive my heart will go against it. Those who obstruct my path will go against it. 1. The young master is extraordinary. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. The drizzle depicts the Shenwu Peak, and the sound of strings can be heard from afar. After the autumn, the clouds are still clear, as if sighing leisurely and intangible. The Land of Suffering, located in the west of the Central Plains, is the largest sword sect organization in the Western martial arts world, and the world is sealed with swords. On the Shenwu Peak, there is an invisible courtyard where the young master wields his sword. After the rain, it clears up in the early morning. Peach blossom petals are scattered with raindrops, and under the peach blossom tree, a knife is lying invisibly on the side of a couch. In his hand, there is a roll of ram in his hand, with red sleeves in front to add fragrance, a simple hand playing the piano, and a beautiful woman shaking a fan in the back. It's really relaxing and enjoyable. The gentle breeze brushed against the deep blue hair, gently caressing the handsome face. When the knife felt a slight drowsiness, a clear and clear voice suddenly came. You ask that there is no time for your return. When the rain rises in the autumn pond at night in Beishan, why cut the candles at the western window together, but talk about the rainy night in Beishan? Dao opened his narrowed eyes invisibly and saw a handsome scholar with a tear mole in the corner of his left eye, waving a folding fan and drifting towards him. Extraordinary brother, Dao Wuwu raised the corner of his mouth slightly and smiled, haven't you figured out your own poem title yet? The person's name is Yu Bufan, and his nickname is Xiao Ding Qianxiu. He is the left protector of the sword in the world, ranking second only to the cheap father who is invisible to the sword. The chairman Dao Wuji, along with his own father, vice chairman Yu Dao Ju. If it were the world in Dao's intangible memory, he and Yu Bufan would not have any intersection, but here, the two have been friends for over a decade. For someone as low-key as me, borrowing famous works from our ancestors is enough. Yu Bufan smiled slightly and said, reading spring and autumn under the peach blossom tree is very elegant for young and old. However, you have taken your book upside down, young master. Do you have it? The knife casually passed the ram aside, revealing the book inside. On the cover was written 5 big characters. Spring night wind and moon mirror. Oh. Yu Bufan's face suddenly appeared, it turns out to be Mr. Lonling Buxihua's new work, no wonder he is so devoted. Dao gave Yu Bufan a look of, you understand me, invisibly, the cover doesn't have the author written on it, my friend did read it too. Hey, a simple person like me, naturally only heard others talk about it and never read it at all. But I found this book from my friend's study. Ah. Who framed me? It's this big and small. A person like me with sharp eyes like a torch would even make bad friends by mistake. It's amazing, it's amazing. Brother Bufan has worked hard all the way, please have some tea. Dao stood up invisibly and personally poured a cup of fragrant tea for Yu Bufan. Brother Bufan must have heard a lot of news about his trip to the Central Plains, right? Of course. Yu Bufan took a sip of fragrant tea and said with a solemn expression, the righteous path of the Central Plains has finally sealed the demon Buddha Bo Sun into the star cloud river at the top of the towering heavenly wall. Yu Bufan recounted the news he had heard, and Dao was mesmerized and somewhat lost in thought. He was originally an ordinary person from another world, and his greatest interest was watching puppetry. He often fantasized about wandering the world of puppetry. Unexpectedly, his fantasy came true. One day, when he woke up, he traveled to the world of Thunderbolt and became the newly born Blade Invisible. This is not a very good start. The young master of the world-sealed swords seems to have been born with a golden spoon in his mouth, but in reality, his cheap father Dao Wuji is an actor. Not only is he secretly ambitious, but he is also cruel and crazy, even enhancing his martial arts by devouring the flesh and blood of his offspring. Dao is said to be the eldest son, but in reality, I don't know how many brothers have become a hard dish for cheap fathers. And the knife in his memory is invisible, even before it turns into a cheap old man's night snack. Despite its unique appearance and divine weapons, as well as character songs and martial arts operas, it is arrogant to the extreme, challenging super-popular characters beyond his capacity. His cheap third uncle, Tian Dao, laughed and sword was dull, only lived 6 episodes before giving away his head. Fortunately, he replaced the newly born Dao Invisible, during the ancient era of Thunderbolt Heroes ranking, separated from the legend of the Sword Dragon by 30 plays. This made Dao feel somewhat relieved, which is much better than crossing over to reach the peak, where the peak is to give away a person's head. Before his travels, in ancient dramas, he traced back to the Thunderbolt Totem, also known as the Tian's True Dragon period before the chaotic era of the demon Buddha Bosun, as Yu Bufan referred to it, and mastered a lot of information that could change his own destiny. However, the Thunderbolt world is too dangerous. It can easily destroy a 100-mile radius with one palm, and big demons roam everywhere. Top-tier experts are beaten into dogs without certain strength, and swords dare not wander the world invisibly. Don't give your head to any third-tier character without giving it to Uncle Cheap, it would be even worse than your original body. So until recently, he has been quietly accumulating his own strength and waiting for the opportunity to come. When I set off to return, the dispute in the underworld's small 3 realms came to an end. The demon-slaying god of the demon-slaying clan subdued the Emperor Jing of the evil energy realm, unifying the underworld with unprecedented strength. The demon-slaying god's generation of heroes will not stop in the underworld, and the Central Plains is truly peaceful and rising again. Upon hearing these words, Dao's heart moved invisibly, which means that it is now the period of the Thunderbolt War. The theme is the underworld, mainly composed of the demon-slaying god, the Emperor Jing, the Demon Queen, and others, fighting against the righteous heroes of the Central Plains. At the same time, there is an extremely mysterious organization in the underworld, Tianyue, which plans to carry out a plan to cleanse the underworld and become a greater enemy of the righteous path in the Central Plains. The heavenly mountain in the underworld will release 6 extremely fierce magic knives to cause chaos in the martial arts world, and that is precisely him, the young master is so leisurely. But just as Dao Invisible was about to speak, a clear voice came from the courtyard door, making him unable to help but sigh. Yu Bufan shook his head and chuckled. Why did the young master look up at the sky and sigh bitterly? I only sigh about the unfairness of fate. Why is it that the third child's friend is surrounded by gentle and beautiful women, while my friend only has a man and a woman? Cough, a strange girl who is not inferior to men. Dao Wuwu quickly changed his mind and looked for Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com. Of course, it was because the handsome young man wearing a military crown, military uniform, and a sword around his waist at the entrance had already appeared by their side with a swoop. The handsome young man didn't even look at the knife and was invisible. He first bowed to Yu Bufan. Brother, you've come back, you've worked hard all the way. Yu Bufan smiled and said, little sister, haven't you seen me for many days? Are you safe? Yes, little sister. This heroic young hero is Yu Qiufeng, an extraordinary younger sister with a strong nature. With superb martial arts skills, she has defeated the vast majority of experts in the world-sealed swords, ranking 3rd among the 4 major celebrities of the 1st God, 2nd unparalleled, 3rd sect, and 4th class. She always dresses as a man. Everything is fine. Yu Qiufeng just turned his head when he saw his young master running away with his shoes on. He flashed in front of Dao Invisible and said with a stern smile, where is the young master going? The chairman ordered me to urge you to practice swordsmanship. Go get the knife. The knife is invincible and straightforward. Otherwise, how can we practice? Autumn wind, please wait a moment. I'll go back soon. No need. Yu Qiufeng flipped over with one hand and turned into a straight-edged single sword with a wide body. I have already helped the young master retrieve it. The same move is also ineffective for you. What zodiac sign do you have? Said the knife with an invisible pout. All right, let's practice and pay attention. Experience the Emperor Extreme Heaven / technique. The Emperor Overlord technique will last for thousands of years. The sword was said to be a practice, but it was like Zero presenting a flying immortal to the Emperor. It twisted and twisted a few times, not to mention Yu Qiufeng. Even Yu Bufan looked at it with a black line on his face. Alright, I'm done practicing. Humph, I'm so tired. Brother Bufan, you've been through a long journey and I'm sweating profusely. Why don't we go soak in a hot spring together? The sword is invisible. Yu Qiu's face turned red with a lively demeanor. Since I have finished practicing, let me test it. Please give me your advice. That year, I covered my eyes with both hands. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. The young master is talented and has a brilliant vision. However, he lacks physical qualifications and refuses to practice hard. It's a pity, Yu Bufan couldn't help but sigh inwardly as he watched the fight between his friend and sister. In his view, Dao Invisible had already seen through his sister Yu Qiufeng's knife technique, and his gaze had already made a prediction, pointing directly at the flaws in her knife technique. Unfortunately, the invisible power and body of the sword are insufficient. When the eyes see it, the body cannot keep up. When the sword is swung, not only the flaws of attacking desire, but also the flaws of one's own moves. Of course, this is just what Yu Bufan and Yu Qiufeng saw. In fact, invisible knives are not impossible. Just don't want to. His physical and mental cultivation has not only far surpassed that of Yu Qiufeng, but also surpassed that of the extraordinary line. And he is extraordinary, but the sword has no limit. The sword techniques within the world's sealed swords are second only to his own experts, and he is a top-notch expert in the martial arts world. During the Dao Long period, it was probably at the level of Tian Dao Shao Jian being dull and Mo Dao Ju Chen not opening the dragon's eye. Its strength was slightly weaker, but at the same level. On top of it, there are top-notch innate experts who possess the combat power of the heavenly 5 dragons. At a higher level, it is the combat power of a sword full of divine equipment with boundless open eyes, or a super innate expert like Luo Ho and Buddha's dual body. Moreover, Dao Invisible has awakened the eye of the sword dragon, which can quickly burst and improve its 5 success body, achieving a stable and extraordinary victory. It can even defeat the dull laughing sword, which is not open to the eye. Of course, there should still be a significant gap compared to the dull laughing sword. The reason why he pretends to have low martial arts skills is naturally because he doesn't want his cheap father Dao Wuji to know that he has awakened his bloodline power. Dao Wuji is one of the 5 heavenly dragons in the upper heavenly realm. He is a fiery red Lin and possesses the eye of the sword dragon, which can instantly increase his body power. He is also an outsider in the heavenly dragon clan and has the ability to devour and strengthen his peers. He couldn't find 4 brothers, so he fed his own son and cultivated the offspring to the point where he could unleash his bloodline power, then devoured them. Since Dao Invisible knows this matter, of course he needs to pretend to be an indestructible piece of scrap wood in order not to be on cheap dad's table. As for the mutual induction between the Yutian Dragon clan, and the unparalleled martial arts of Dao Wuji, Dao Invisible can't deceive him. That is the biggest secret of Dao Invisible. After crossing over, he possesses an extremely special soul body. His soul and the invisible soul of the newborn sword merge into one, but not merge, but combine to become the Dragon Knight. His human soul controls the invisible dragon soul of the sword. In his sea of consciousness, the human soul is above the head of the blade dragon soul, and his hands cover the dragon soul's eyes, restraining the fluctuation of the dragon soul's spiritual consciousness. Moreover, the dragon's soul is naturally powerful and grows stronger as it grows and develops. To this day, it is a soul body that can manifest in vitro, accommodating energy bodies and moving separately from the body. So whether others use true qi to explore or divine perception, Dao invisibly is a skilled martial artist at a barely second-line level. In the martial arts world, one can also be a regular sect protector or something, but in the world of sealing swords, this strength does not match the identity of the young master. This is also the reason why Yu Qiufeng always finds him displeased. Although he has an extremely intelligent mind and can easily grasp the internal skills of the sword technique, he is unwilling to work hard to make up for the physical gap. Although he can become a first-class expert, he is just letting himself go. She didn't know how convoluted the blade was when it was carrying someone on its back. Since he was able to cultivate his body, he had never slept and was replaced by cultivation. When he seemed lazy on weekdays, he also used his soul body to cultivate. Changing fate, how could it be just verbal talk? With a cheap dad around who always wants to make himself a chef, how could he waste time? When a crisp metallic sound, the competition ended with the invisible blade being knocked away. Yu Qiufeng originally wanted to practice the invisible sword more, but the more she fought, the more irritable she became. Although it was her steady suppression of the opponent, she was the one who was exposed to many flaws. She struck the knife invisibly without any fighting power, but her sword moves were seen as useless by the knife invisibly. Come again. Yu Qiufeng became more and more angry as she thought, but saw the invisible eyes of the knife turn, covering her arm with an exaggerated exclamation, and she fell to the ground. It's a fork, it's a fork. Brother Buffon, help me, come and help me quickly. Yu Buffon looked at his friends, if you don't come over, I'll roll around, expression with tears and laughter in his eyes. He shook his head and stopped the little girl who was about to get angry. Little girl, take your time. Think back to the competition just now, maybe there will be some gains. Humph. Yu Qiufeng snorted coldly, but had to admit in her heart that she needed to face up to her own shortcomings in swordsmanship. Xiao Zhu. Yu Buffon lifted the sword invisibly and earnestly advised, the young master is talented and intelligent. With just a little hard work and effort, his strength will definitely improve significantly. Knowledge is power, it's better to read more than to practice it, said the indifferent pout of the knife, Pooh. Yu Qiufeng couldn't help but exclaim, just those broken books of yours. The sword looked surprised and said, Autumn Wind, how can you look down on Confucian classics? You know what book I'm talking about. How do I know what book it is without saying its name? No, if you haven't read it, how do you know it's a broken book? Autumn Wind, you're not right. You. Alright, alright. Yu Buffon grinned bitterly as he pulled apart the two of them who were about to argue again. Although they had a good relationship when they were young, at some point they became uncomfortable without arguing. Never mind. Dao Wuwu dusted off his clothes, I'm going to pay my respects to my parents. Brother Buffon, I'll take care of you tonight. Autumnal Wind, please don't accompany me. Okay. Yu Buffon nodded, but Yu Qiufeng picked up the invisible sword and said calmly, I happen to have something to consult with the chairman. Let's go together. The knife sneered invisibly, it's a very important matter, can't we not go? That's right. The young master has changed his mind. He needs to first seek advice from teacher Gongsun on the casting method. Qiufeng, work is urgent, so hurry up and find my father. Goodbye. Yu Qiufeng was so hanging that he didn't dodge his waist. He was about to go to pursue Yang Chang at Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com, but he was grabbed by Yu Buffon and said, forget it, Qiufeng. Brother, I brought you a gift. Come with me to get it. Humph, chairman, father, and you all indulge him. What benefits does this have for him? Little sister really cares about everyone. Who cares about him? I just don't want him to embarrass the world by sealing the sword. Yes, Yes, let's go, let's go. On the other hand, the elusive sword, wiping away the cold sweat from his forehead, finally got rid of the supervisor. Competing with Yu Qiufeng was truly tiring, and it was difficult to pretend to be so seamless that the knife was not even visible. In addition to being located at the main altar of Shenwu Peak, Xianxia Fengdao also has 4 major strongholds: Dongpin, Shizhao, Beiluan, and Nanwu. The Gongsun teacher who said, Dao Invisible, is the master of the famous Dao God workshop in the West, Sun Zhuofeng. He just wants to show that his martial arts skills and qualifications are not good, but everything else, whether it's about improving his own strength, whether it's playing qin, chess, calligraphy, painting, astrology, formation, or mechanism, he can learn them all at once, and he is all skilled. Unfortunately, this is a dangerous world. To inherit the world's swordsmanship, the most important thing must be military force. Fortunately, Dao had no intention of inheriting the world's sealed Dao. I have seen the young master before, but I apologize for any inconvenience caused. Please forgive me. The receptionist Dao Invisible is Murong, the general manager of Mingdao Shenfang, who specializes in handling external business, and in fact, Dao Invisible is also looking for him. Where, Director Murong is too polite. After a few pleasantries, Dao asked invisibly, Director Murong, have you received any news about the materials with extremely yin and extremely young attributes that I asked you to purchase? I was about to tell the young master that I have obtained 2 precious materials, the Fire Yang Iron Wood and the Xianyin Ghost Iron, as I will not betray my fate. 3. Traveling far away. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Murong did not inquire about the main materials of his eldest child's extreme yin and extreme yang attributes. Knife invisibly learned the casting technique of 60% to 70% of Gongsuan's strength, and has also produced some excellent cutting tools. It is common to cherish the materials. The knife was invisible and didn't stay too dazed. It took the materials and was about to leave, but it met a gentle and delicate beautiful girl who was as gentle as water. Hey, there's a gap. Ah. The beautiful girl was taken aback. Young master, what's the difference? The difference in fate. Why are the friends of the 3rd child surrounded by gentle beauties, and the fiancé AE is even better than those beauties? With Ben and Xiao around, it's just. Dao Wuwu looked back before continuing, just a violent and crazy man's wife. The beautiful girl covered her mouth and chuckled lightly. Don't make fun of me, young master. If Sister Qiufeng hears about it, I will really use violence against you. The beautiful girl is the 3rd younger brother of Jun Mani, who is invisible to the sword. To be more precise, she is the fiancée AE of the 3rd cousin Dao Wuxin. On the surface, she is only the adopted daughter of Gongsun Juefeng, but in reality, she is still the direct descendant of the 4th younger brother who was sworn in by the demon god Wu Jun Luoho. Of course, Luoho is still quite far away from Dao Invisible, so there is no need to pay attention for now. After chatting and laughing with Jun Manshi, Dao Invisible will return to the Divine Martial Peak. Dao Invisible, apart from being friends with you, is a happy enemy with Yu Qiufeng, and maintains a superficial closeness with others like Jun Mangui. Whether it's the strong and competitive 2nd brother Dao without me, or the 3rd brother Dao without any martial arts qualifications without intention. The so-called mother's dream is like Yen, but in fact, she killed her mother and took her place. Her twin sister, who is greedy for power and wealth, has a dream like Yun. Or perhaps the mighty and domineering man in front of him is like this. Father, I greet you invisibly. The study of Dao Wuji, Dao invisibly faced this biological father of this world, deeply bowing his head. On the surface, this majestic man's gaze showed a hint of affection. In fact, in the invisible sea of consciousness of Dao, what his dragon soul perceives is the 6-clawed dragon soul of Dao Wuji, burning with blood flames. Greedily searching for the elusive aura of the same clan, but unable to find it, sometimes roaring up in anger. Fortunately, the dragon soul only represents the subconscious of Dao Wuji. Although Dao Wuji is incredibly powerful, it is the power of the heavens. Dao Wuji itself does not cultivate divine souls, and he cannot perceive the special nature of Dao invisible soul body. The restlessness that Su couldn't find was also hidden in the rage of his dragon soul itself, and was ignored by Dao Wuji. Under the calm surface of Dao Wuji, there is already a wild and extreme heart hidden. Well, Qiufeng said, are you lazy again? Dao Wuji put down the document in his hand and gestured for Dao to sit down invisibly. Ha, I'm not the material for practicing martial arts. Dao Wuji looked like a loving and strict father, shaking his head helplessly. Anyway, everyone has their own aspirations, so let's help handle more official duties for our father. Ha! Dao scratched his head lazily and said, my second younger brother likes to assist his father very much, so let him be more filial. One day, the world-sealed swords will be handed over to you. Can you pull it down? Dao silently slandered and smiled nonchalantly on the surface. Father is in his prime of life, why bother thinking about these things? By the way, I'm feeling a bit bored staying at Shinwu Peak and want to travel around for a while. Are you going out? Dao Wuji frowned slightly and said in a deep voice, Extraordinary just came to report to me. There will be another war in the Central Plains martial arts world. If the Central Plains martial arts world is not in the midst of war one day, it must be on the way to prepare for the outbreak of war. Dao sighed before saying again, don't worry, I'm just wandering around in the Western martial arts world to ease my mind. Don't go out of the realm of the world-sealed swords, and don't play for too long. Just set a deadline of 1 month, and when you come back, come and assist with your father's work. No problem, after coming back, I promise to work hard and never be lazy, Dao said with a serious face as he patted his chest. Dao Wuji shook his head helplessly. After so many years of being a father and son, he couldn't understand that others were just adding water to their words, but this kid was just adding water to his words. At least don't miss your mother's birthday, otherwise you'll be locked up when you come back. Go ahead. After saying a few more words, Dao said goodbye and left invisibly. This time, as soon as he really closed the door to his study, a layer of cold sweat oozed from his forehead. Dao Wuji didn't feel it himself, but his crazy dragon soul put a mountain of pressure on Dao Invisible, a person with powerful divine consciousness. The knife quickly wiped away the cold sweat without leaving a trace, and then left as if nothing had happened before finally letting out a sigh of relief. Then my heart began to throb faintly. Acting quietly and practicing diligently for many years, finally, it was the moment when he believed he could start changing his own destiny. Returning to pack up, Dao unconsciously embarked on a journey to the Central Plains with some excitement. Yu Bufan. Friend, have you forgotten anything? This is the scent of free air. So the air of Shinwu Peak is not free. Cough cough. Dao Wuwu had just walked 2 or 3 miles out of Shinwu Peak when suddenly the voice of Yu Qiufeng came from behind, causing him, who was full of thoughts, to choke directly. The knife turned around invisibly and looked at Yu Qiufeng helplessly. What do you want? I heard that the young master mainly goes out to relax, but I suddenly became interested and wanted to travel around for a while. Why don't I travel to the book garden www.zhaoshuyuan.com? Are you the only one? Are you a workaholic? Dao had a black line on his face. My dad is afraid I'll play too much and let you follow me. With a, you know it's good, expression on her face, Yu Qiufeng said calmly, it's just wandering around within the scope of the world-sealed swords. The young master won't mind, will he? So, do I want to go to the Wind and Moon Festival to pay a visit? You go, goodbye. After finishing speaking invisibly, Dao turned around and left, but was blocked by Yu Qiufeng's wheezing. Young master, not only my brother, but you've been asking people about things in the Central Plains lately. You want to go to the Central Plains, right? Dao looked speechless and said, hey, you're one of the 4 celebrities, a gold medalist, not a detective. Don't be so clever, okay. You really want to go to the Central Plains, Yu Qiufeng said with an expression that I had already seen through the truth. No, the Central Plains is too dangerous. As the young master, if something happens, the chairman will be very difficult. You are not allowed to go. I don't care, I'm going. Then don't blame me for being impolite. Dare you, Yu Qiufeng, if you dare to tap my acupoint, I will self-destruct my martial arts and then say that you intend to rape me. In one sentence, Yu Qiu's face turned red with blood as he spoke. You have no manners. Goodbye. After finishing speaking, Dao ran away, but without showing his true strength, he couldn't shake off Yu Qiufeng and was stopped by the opponent's wheezing. However, when Yu Qiufeng really wanted to point her acupoints, she saw that the other party had already pressed a knife against her neck. Well, a nail-trimming file. Yu Qiufeng, you can't force me. Yu Qiufeng said, I really lost to you. 4K follower has arrived. You are listening at novel full.audio. You can also go to the Central Plains, but you must accompany me. Yu Qiufeng has no choice, and she can't really be hard against the sword invisibly. Competition and competition are one thing. The vice chairman's daughter uses force to force the chairman's son to change his will, which is another matter. Autumn wind, what are the advantages of Ben de Shao that are worth your effort for? Can I change them all? Before she could finish speaking, Yu Qiufeng regretted it. She was just angry and didn't really think so. Then I really want to thank such a precious status. Dao gave a self-deprecating smile from the bottom of his heart. If he could choose, he would never choose the identity of cheap father's night snack. His most special feature was not the bloodline of the heavenly dragon, but the soul of controlling the dragon. I didn't mean that. Forget it. The knife waved its hand invisibly. Autumn wind, you are invited to be a free attendant, and I have no reason to refuse. Dao unconsciously knew that this was not the intention of Yu Qiufeng alone, and Dao Wuji must have also sensed his intention. So let Yu Qiufeng follow, otherwise it might be the secret surveillance of Cheap Dad's imperial chef, the Moon Punisher. However, you have to promise me 3 conditions. You say. Yu Qiufeng was a bit unhappy, but the other party stopped bothering and pestering, so she put up with it for now. Firstly, if you want to dress up as a man, you don't need to be accompanied by guards. You can consider traveling with the United States. I am already a woman. Yu Qiufeng instinctively touched the handle of the knife and said, it's restoring women's clothing. Do you know that pretending to be a man all day is a disgrace to the scenery? Dao made a sarcastic remark and quickly said, secondly, you can't make any decisions for me, nor can you force me. I can go wherever I want, even if I want to go to the demon-slaying clan or the evil energy realm, you can't stop me. You dream. I will never allow you to go to such a dangerous place. Don't be so irritable, okay? Dao waved his hand invisibly. Let me give you an analogy. You can exchange it for Yunda Mountain or Yunshan Mountain. As long as it's not a dangerous place, I won't stop it. Great, the 3rd condition is to promise me 3 more conditions. The sword is invisible. Yu Qiufeng drew the sword out of its sheath, his true energy burst out, you should waste your martial arts. Don't worry. Dao casually patted Yu Qiufeng's shoulder, not afraid that she would directly strike him. Just joking, the 3rd condition is that you want to be a qualified attendant and take care of me meticulously. Yu Qiufeng took a few deep breaths before finally regaining his anger. Don't worry, invisible little one, Aunt Yu will take good care of you. Dao Invisible gave a wicked smile and grabbed Yu Qiufeng's small hand. Alright, Aunt Yu, we need to buy candy for Invisible to eat, he said. You're impolite. Yu Qiufeng blushed as if bleeding was about to seep out. He shook off someone's big pig hoof, but was then hooked up by someone. Let's go. The land of suffering is vast and the resources are abundant. Dao has been here for so many years, and he is also the young master of the world's sealed swords. However, he is surprised that he has not obtained a complete map of suffering. This is certainly not necessary for the plot, but rather for the unique space of suffering, with many natural secrets and caves. There are also super experts who have the ability to move mountains and build lakes, using formations and spells to create secret realms. So whenever you feel like you've been through a lot of hardships, you'll have an extra map. Fortunately, Dao Invisible is heading towards the core area of hardship, and Mingdao Shenfang has a lot of business dealings with the Central Plains. The hardship is so dangerous, and one knife seller can anger 3 road robbers. The arms business should not be too good. Dao Invisible and Yu Qiufeng followed the commercial route of Mingdao Shenfang and successfully arrived in the Central Plains. To say the most famous place in the Central Plains, it is undoubtedly the Yunqian Mountain, where the first sage of the Central Plains, the fragrant white lotus, truly resides. Or the cloud-crossing mountain where the righteous giant Brahma practices with one page of his book. But the most lively ones are the martial arts public pavilions where big figures, big gangs, and even generations of dynasties come to release news. The public pavilion is not just a simple billboard in the intangible memory of the knife. But it's a very large market, with a very wide open space in the middle and a huge bulletin board in the center, filled with various notices and messages from the martial arts world. However, the central billboard is usually empty, waiting for the most important and sensational news to be posted in the martial arts world. The tea stall next to the open space of the notice pavilion, transformed back into women's clothing and also into the beautiful jade autumn wind, drinking tea alone for a long time, only to see the sword return invisibly. What important news did you get? Does Guiyin know? I have heard that the powerful martial arts masters in the realm of evil energy, as well as those in the realm of desire for the sky, Shu Shi Gong, and Yan Yan's wars, are all experts in the 100 battle techniques of Fengling Island. The world's swords are not involved in the martial arts affairs of the Central Plains, but they naturally have sufficient attention to the Central Plains. Yu Qiufeng has a certain understanding of the major events and important figures that have occurred in the Central Plains. Because he conspired with Desire Heavenly Sky to create a mechanism, refine the elixir of immortality, and killed Duke Shu Shi. He also conspired to kill the hegemon Heng Qianxiu, who had helped the righteous path several times, angered Su Huanjun and was eventually eradicated by Su Huanjun's strategy. And during the period when Dao Invisible came to the Central Plains, many major events occurred. The ambition of the demon-slaying god erupted, and he joined forces with the evil energy realm led by the emperor to launch an attack on the pillar of the Central Plains, Iya Book. However, he was repelled by the joint efforts of the righteous heroes. There is also the legendary world's #1 divine sword, blood-stained ice moth, which reappears in the world. The holder is one of the 3 major villains in the martial arts world, Zhou Zongtian, who is known for his crazy sea tumor. He has deep hatred with Lady Xian of Hope Palace City, the Sword Emperor Jin Sanglong of Chuanliang Sword Clan, and the Lord Zui Qingho of Qianfei Island, causing a series of disputes and killings. At this time, the most mysterious organization in the underworld, Tianyue, also began their conspiracy, releasing 5 extremely evil magic swords one after another, and seeking the Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com to launch a new wave of extremely fierce blood tribulations in the martial arts world. Where are we going next? Go to the clouds and dust, visit the legendary fragrant white lotus. Can you see it? Yu Qiufeng said to himself, the most intelligent person in the Central Plains is even busier than your father. Meet you, a social idol person. Dao shrugged invisibly and said, let's mention the name of our chairman Dao. Dao Invisible actually didn't want to compete with his father, but unfortunately, he couldn't find any locations he wanted to inquire about, such as Death Swamp, Xiangri Village, and Quiet Mountain Jinglu. The Death Swamp is the place where Nie Ying, a soul-haunting ghost realm who is one of the 3 major villains along with Zhou Zongtian, died. In the past, the 3 major villains, Zhou Zongtian, Nie Shiying, and Su Wenkue, slaughtered the Golden City. In order to seek revenge, the orphan of the Golden City Lord, Lady Xian, served as a traitor and married Su Wenkui. Then, she joined forces with the Chuanliang Sword Emperor, Jin Songlong, and Zui Qingho to eliminate the three major villains one by one. But Nie Ying's evil spirit will not be extinguished, and he made a contract with the Heavenly Mountain during his lifetime. By this time, he should have been controlled by one of the 6 magic sabers, the Huangquan blade, and transformed into borrowing his life from the heavens. As for why Dao Invisible is so bold, daring to plot against the magic sword of the Heavenly Mountains, and even daring to provoke the villain of borrowing life from the heavens. It's not that Dao Invisible thinks he's good at it. With the opening of Dao Dragon's Eye, even the top-tier experts on the table today are guaranteed to win. But rather, Dao Invisible felt that his soul body was very effective. He had tried it before, and his soul body had a strong suppressive power against the existence of souls. Especially for the ghosts and spirits of yin and evil, their soul power combined with the characteristic of dragon soul reaching yang gives them a great advantage, which is the source of his confidence in daring to use the magic knife. He conquered evil spirits and borrowed his life from heaven. When this undead evil soul met him, he was naturally suppressed by his first-level strength. Even if he didn't use the dragon eye, he had confidence not to lose to the opponent. 5. I want to transfer to practice swordsmanship. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Huang Quan, Mo, Dang Yu, Fei Dao, Yan Qi, and Wang Zhe. These 6 magic swords are the strongest divine weapons in the underworld and the heavenly mountains. The 6 slashes of Giang. The ghost yang 6 slashes and cutting is the deepest part of the heavenly mountains, formed by the pregnancy of yin and evil energy. It is born with a spirit, and its sword spirit can amplify the user's killing intent, hatred, anger, and even control the dead. The magic knife controls its users to create slaughter, absorbing emotions, blood, and residual souls to grow. In the end, the 6 magic knives compete with each other to determine the strongest sword. At that time, Giang's 6 slashes and cutting will no longer be just the strongest divine weapon in the underworld, but the strongest ferocious weapon in the world. And this is precisely why Dao Invisible not only dares to provoke the heavens to borrow his life, but also dares to plot the magic sword. The magic sword has its own spirit, evil spirits, and are naturally restrained by Dao Invisible's dragon soul. Of course, restraint is mutual. Perhaps the magic sword is stronger than controlling the dragon soul, and can counter the invisibility of the sword in reverse. But all in all, the knife has an innate advantage in this area, at least you can give it a try. The Huangquan Dao borrows its life from the sky, which is not a very dangerous target for the Dao Invisibly. Unfortunately, Dao Invisible did not find out the location of the death swamp. The death of Nie Ying in the soul summoning ghost domain is a secret story that is rarely known in the martial arts world. So he's going to take a turn. Dao couldn't help but hear that Zui Qingho had just been killed by Zhou Zongtian. So according to his memory, Zui Qingho's friend, Chuanliang Sword Emperor Jin Songlong, would seek revenge against Zhou Zongtian, and then his sword was cut off by Zhou Zongtian's blood-stained ice moth. Then Jin Songlong would go to Jinglu in Jishan to seek the sword from the famous swordsmith Jin Xiling, and together with Su Huanjun, they would deal with Zhou Zongtian. After defeating Zhou Zongtian, the two of them, Nie Ying's incarnation of the Huangquan blade, borrowed his life from the sky and would come to steal Zhou Zongtian's head. Dao Invisible cannot focus on Su Huanjun, which is called having ulterior motives, and cannot directly inquire about the location of Su Huanjun's death swamp. It is called having another plan. But it is very reasonable for him to go and ask about the location of the quiet mountain Jinglu, which is known as a swordsmith. He would visit in admiration and seek advice on casting techniques. So he can, coincidentally encounter, Jin Songlong, then follow the vine and wait for the rabbit, and wait until the yellow spring sword borrows its life from the sky to appear. Clouds and dust gather. Compared to the burial places of murderers who have died for decades, small villages without any peculiarities, and the residences of hermits and experts, the fragrant white lotus is truly a home that not only everyone knows, but also any well-informed martial artist can guide you. Fortunately, when Dao invisibly arrived here, Su happened to be at home. Su Huanjun has just finished the matter of Hope Palace City and helped Lady Xian uncover an insider who is loyal to the former city lord Su Wenkue. Just as I came back, before I could even drink the fragrant tea brewed by my friend Chu Shirtu, I heard a young voice with average martial arts and physical cultivation calling out, "Do you dare to ask if the pure and fragrant white lotus sage is at home?" Su Huanjun led Zhongyu and Jingdao with his selfless and enthusiastic heart. He had no airs like a Jingdao leader, and anyone who came to seek help, regardless of their status, would do his best to help. So he replied, "The villain is at home, who came. Please enter. Please forgive me." With a nagging sound, Su Huanjun soon saw a handsome and graceful young hero, bringing a gentle and heroic young girl. He couldn't help but sigh inwardly, what a pair of young heroes they were. As soon as I followed, I remembered my son Su Shuyuan. When will Shuyuan also find a beautiful confidant? I am invisibly cutting. This is Yu Qiufeng, who came here today to visit the first sage in the Central Plains, a simple sage. I have long admired him. As Su Huanjun scrutinized Dao Invisible also scrutinized this thunderbolt brother. As expected, his temperament was extraordinary, his demeanor was extraordinary, and he was inscrutable. Those who are inferior have no reputation, they are all praised by friends in the martial arts world. Young Xia, they are praised falsely. Su Huanjun smiled slightly and asked, "I wonder where the young hero comes from." "We are the world-sealed swords from the Western Wuling." Su Huanjun's heart turned and immediately thought of the information he had heard before. The largest sword sect organization in the Western martial arts, Su had heard of its name long ago, but was unable to visit. The young hero's surname is Dao, and I don't know how to address Mr. Dao Wuji, the chairman of the world's swordsmanship. I am the son of Chairman Dao who is not up to par. Originally, it was the young master of the sword. Su was disrespectful. Where, the virtuous and respected individuals are renowned in the martial arts world, and are role models for our generation to learn from. Dao Invisible and Brother Thunderbolt praised each other for a while before saying, "To be honest with Sage Su, I came this time to inquire about the residence of the famous sword-forging master Jinzailing Jin." "Oh. That's the legendary sword master. Is there anything urgent that young swordsman Dao needs from him?" Su is really a bit worried that this newcomer is not afraid of tigers, and he is looking for a famous swordsmith to engage in some kind of sword battle. Su Xianren must have noticed that my martial arts are average, and I can't practice swordsmanship well no matter how I practice it. So if I want to try swordsmanship, I want to find a famous sword. As Su Xianren knows, I only have swords at home, and forging a precious sword at home requires training. Are you afraid of being disciplined, so you're not afraid of being beaten to death by your father while practicing swordsmanship? Not only was Su really surprised, but Yu Qiufeng was also surprised inexplicably. How could this guy want to abandon his sword? And I also have a basic understanding of casting techniques. I would like to ask the master of sword casting for advice. Even if I cannot obtain a sword, I can still craft it myself. Su Huanjun pondered for a moment before saying, "If we were to forge a sword in swordsmanship, Su Mao also has some insights here. Perhaps we can exchange some ideas with the young hero." However, does Chairman Dao know the young hero's choice for the future path? How many martial arts events do Sage Su have to work on? How can I waste your precious time? And this is not a choice. Finding the book garden www.zhaoshuyuan.com is just an attempt, and as the saying goes, stones from other mountains can attack jade. Maybe I tried swordsmanship, but it enlightened me. Okay, then. Su Huan really thought for a moment before nodding and saying, "But Su only knows the location of Jishan and has never been to Jinglu, so he can't help recommend you, Xianxia. That's enough, please be a sage. Dao Invisible originally wanted to know the location of Jishan. He didn't even need to go to Jinglu, just wait for the Chuanliang Sword Emperor Jin Sanglong at Jishan. Dao Invisible accepted the road view map, bid farewell to Su Huanjin, and left Yunqin Mountain. After a long time, Yu Qiufeng asked, "Do you really want to change your swordsmanship? Did you not work hard before because you didn't like knives, like swords?" Haha. Dao Yining chuckled lightly, "Autumn wind little sister, the first day you met me. Do you think I like knives or swords? Or I like laziness and don't like practicing anything." Yu Qiufeng's eyes twitched, but then he asked, "So why are you going to find that famous swordsman? Discussing the art of casting, can stones from other mountains be used to attack jade? I have absorbed the theory of casting swords and used it to cast divine swords. Isn't the casting technique taking it to the next level?" This is a reasonable explanation, but Yu Qiufeng always vaguely felt something was wrong. "You really don't want to switch to practicing swordsmanship? Knife's invisible heart says that you have awakened women's intuition." Humph, you guessed it right. Ben, the young master, is destined to become a man who transcends the legendary wind of the sword world in the future. There's still time to worship me now. You need to practice swordsmanship, unless you defeat me with your swordsmanship first. Anna, I promise to only practice swordsmanship. No, I almost got caught up in it by you. I promise to be lazy if I can. Humph, sooner or later I'll be furious with you. Let's go, let's go. 6. Volcano Great Filial Piety Son. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Hello, Lao Zhang, why is there a bag on your head? I was beaten by that volcano filial son. That kid is too extreme. I kindly asked his father to drink and chat, but he actually said I was harming his father and beat me away with a stick. It's crazy. On the way to Jishan Jinglu, passing by a small fishing village next to an unknown lake, Dao Invisible and Yu Qiufeng heard the two elderly people talking like this. The knife couldn't help but twitch at the corner of its eye. He circled around for a long time before finally finding out the location of the quiet mountain villa. However, he randomly chose a path and encountered another place he wanted to find. Autumn wind, the sky is getting dark. Let's stay overnight in the fishing village ahead, right? This is the clouds blocking the sun, okay? Yu Qiufeng looked at the knife silently, not knowing what kind of nerve this young master had. Eating a lot of fish and meat all day, and occasionally trying farmhouse food is also good. Let's go. Whatever you want. For so many days, Yu Qiufeng has also become accustomed to thinking and even pulling her little hand with the invisible knife. Dao Invisible casually looked for a farmyard and gave the owner an ingot of silver, saying he wanted to rest for a while. Farmer Uncle accepted the silver, saying that it didn't matter if the money wasn't good, mainly because he was warm and hospitable. He brought water to wash their faces, brewed a pot of hot tea, and went to the market to buy wine and vegetables. "Auntie, may I ask what the name of your village is?" said Dao invisibly to Uncle's wife. "Our village is called Xianxia village." "Sure enough, this is it." The knife moved invisibly in his heart, facing the Sun village. He was too filial to his parents, to the extent that filial piety became a controlled volcano. It was precisely in his memory that, good luck, found the ordinary young farmer who had the magic knife. This is also one of his goals, but after borrowing his life from the heavens with the yellow spring knife, although Yu Qiufeng is an ordinary person who does not know martial arts, finding a small fishing village in such a difficult situation is like finding a needle in the bottom of the sea. Unexpectedly, he just stumbled upon me so casually. Although it deviates from the plan and even appears a bit redundant, well, it's not redundant. He must have a face-to-face with Brother Thunderbolt, and Quiet Mountain and Quiet Mansion are also the map points he must open. In short, the pies that fall from the sky must be eaten. "Auntie, do you have anything unique here?" "Yes, we have a very unique thing here. Farmer Auntie slapped her thigh, feeling slightly angry. She recounted the various deeds of the Volcano Filial son Yu Piaofeng, and the strict and even excessive filial piety practices that restricted his parents from leaving their homes, allowing them to only move around in small courtyards, not eating meat, and only being vegetarian. Let's go, autumn wind, take a look at this strange and filial son. This time, Yu Qiufeng didn't use a knife to pull invisibly, and she was also curious about how such a strange thing could exist in the world. Yu Piaofeng's home is on the edge of Xianxia village. When they passed by, they saw two elderly people with old bodies and helpless expressions, slowly circling in a small fence courtyard. Elderly person, may I ask? Hello. You too. As soon as Dao Invisible was about to ask a question, he felt a cold and gloomy aura, followed by a furious shout. Turning around, he saw an ordinary young farmer rushing towards him with a face full of anger. That cold and gloomy aura emanated from the long bundle carried by the youth. Not only is it cold and gloomy, but the knife's invisibly sharp soul sense also perceives the soul fluctuations within it, constantly affecting the thinking of young people, making them angry, extreme, and twisted. What kind of people are you? The young man rushed to Dao Invisible and Yu Qiufeng, and with a stern expression, his halberd fingers shouted, "Why are you peeping outside my house? Are you trying to plot against my parents?" Ah! Yu Qiufeng was said to be stunned, lost in her thoughts on why she had ulterior motives towards ordinary farmers. The knife knew invisibly that this young man had already been deeply influenced by the things behind him, and was only a little short of being completely distorted in cognition. Dao Invisible smiled slightly and clasped his fists to the young man, saying, "This elder brother misunderstood. We came here to visit the famous filial son Yu Piaofeng from afar." Has his filial piety become so famous? I am Yu Piaofeng. The young man shook his head and the fierce aura in his expression dissipated slightly. What are you looking for me for? Oh, my goodness! Dao exclaimed invisibly and exaggeratedly, so you are big brother Yu. I came here to learn your filial piety. Is that so? Yu Qiufeng and Yu Piaofeng both looked at the knife strangely without a trace. You are. At this moment, the two elders in the courtyard also approached, and the father-in-law cautiously said to Yu Piaofeng, "Please invite the guests into the house." No need. Yu Piaofeng heard his father's voice, as if triggering some mechanism, and his calmed expression suddenly became serious. "Father, mother, you have been active enough time. It's time to take a nap." But, "Father, regular sleep is the foundation of health. Please go back to your room with your mother to rest." Hey. Okay. The two elders reluctantly entered the room, and Yu Piaofeng nodded in satisfaction. Brother Yu. You are so filial, you are truly a role model for us. I will definitely learn from you well. Yes, is that so? Yu Qiufeng looked at the excited and admired Dao Invisible, imagining how this guy treated Chairman Dao. Aren't you afraid that your father will hang you up and fight? Yu Piaofeng was quite satisfied with Dao Invisible's attitude this time. In terms of filial piety, I do have many insights. If you want to listen, it's okay for me to say a little. I really want to hear it, little brother. Okay, let me say a little more. You need to understand the meaning with your heart. Yu Qiufeng looked at Dao with a black line on his face as he listened attentively and took notes. He approached Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com and said to himself, "You don't really have any resentment towards your father, do you? I really listened to your words, surpassing 10 years of studying. Brother Yu's filial piety is truly touching." For a long time, when Yu Piaofeng said that his mouth was dry and his tongue was dry, Dao Invisible sighed like this. Well, this is just a small part of my filial piety, there's more you need to learn. But Dao Wuwu suddenly changed his tone and said, "In my opinion, Brother Yu's filial piety is rare in the world, but as for filial piety, there seems to be a small gap between him and filial piety." The knife said something small invisibly, but gestured for a distance of arms spread out. Yu Piaofeng suddenly became gloomy, even grabbing the long bundle behind him with one hand. His filial piety never allowed anyone to slander him. The sudden outbreak of the killing intent made Yu Piaofeng shiver all over. This young man with no martial arts skills made her feel a hint of danger. The knife was invisible but seemed oblivious, and with a smile, he said. "Brother Yu, don't worry, I'm just saying what I saw with my own eyes." Brother Yu himself said, "Is your home a high-walled courtyard? Is it well-fed and well-fed? Is there a servant to serve you? Is there a specialized doctor to pay attention to the health of the second elder? If so, will the second elder live healthier and more comfortable? And can these better reflect Brother Yu's filial piety?" The series of questions posed by Dao Invisible seemed like a soul torment, leaving Yu Piaofeng speechless for a moment before saying, "These material conditions are not something that a commoner like me can expect. I can only strive to do what I can. What if I say, Brother Yu, as long as he does one thing, he can achieve everything and take his filial piety to the next level? What's going on?" 7. Cang Mo Dao, right. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Behind Brother Yu, is that a knife? How did you know? Originally, Yu Piaofeng's expression was gentle. Upon hearing the knife ask him about the big knife he found by the lake 2 days ago, his gaze instantly became dangerous, and he held on to the handle of the knife wrapped in a bundle. "I and my companions are both skilled in swordsmanship, so it is evident at a glance that Brother Yu's sword is a rare and exquisite piece." Dao Invisible still turned a blind eye to Yu Piaofeng's dangerous gaze and asked with a smile, "And Brother Yu has no martial arts skills, so he should have accidentally found this knife, right? So what? If you don't know martial arts, you can learn it. This sword is not for sale. Selling a knife is filial piety, which can elevate Brother Yu's filial piety to a higher level. Brother Yu, I am willing to pay 1,000 taels of silver, which is enough for Brother Yu to buy a house, land, hire tenant farmers, and build an industry. Not only can it make the elderly couple's life more comfortable, but Brother Yu no longer needs to rush for life and can have more time to be filial to them." This. Yu Piaofeng was deeply controlled by the magic knife, but every invisible word from the knife hit the deepest part of his heart, causing him to hesitate, contradict, and struggle. He couldn't help but embrace his head with both hands, his expression twisted, and the idea of selling his sword to show filial piety and keeping his precious sword fiercely clashed in his mind. "Brother Yu, what else do you have to hesitate about? I thought you were the most filial son in the world and would agree without hesitation. Is your filial piety inferior to a randomly picked knife?" And just as Yu Piaofeng was engaged in a battle between heaven and man in his heart, the invisible sound of the knife continued to penetrate his ears, even directly into his mind. This voice, as if with magic, gradually helped Yu Piaofeng's desire to sell his sword and fulfill his filial piety outweigh the desire to keep his precious sword. "Okay, I'll sell it." Finally, Yu Piaofeng struggled to remove the burden from behind and trembled as he handed it to Dao Invisible. The knife's invisible and solemn expression flashed by, gripping the handle tightly. In an instant, the cold and gloomy aura of the 9 nether hell wind, enveloped in strong spiritual fluctuations, rushed into his body and mind from the invisible palm of the knife. "Cut it, kill it, release all your desires from the bottom of your heart." "I'll release you, Grandpa." "Shut up." However, the spiritual fluctuations that rushed into the invisible sea of the sword were easily dispersed by a loud dragon chant. In the sea of consciousness, the sword invisibly controls the human soul of the dragon, releasing its eyes. Together with the dragon, the human and dragon go against the wave of spiritual consciousness, locking in its source. That is a thick back mountain cutting sharp sword with a black body and ripples like shark fins on its body, emitting a strong killing intent and a sinister aura from the underworld. One of the 6 magic knives of the heavenly mountains in the underworld, the Cang magic knife. Cang Mo, the magic sword has its own spirit, it is the sword spirit. Only then did the sword spirit sense the abnormality of the invisible soul of the sword, and let out a violent roar, unleashing a frenzy of killing intent and evil intent. Cang Mo, right. However, Dao Invisible was as nervous as facing Yu Piaofeng. Why did he have to spit so much on Yu Piaofeng? A young man who doesn't know martial arts can only be harmed by the magic knife. If he takes it away directly, it is also helping him. That's natural. This is the first time Dao Invisible has come into contact with the magic knife. He is not sure how strong the magic knife is, and whether his dragon soul can subdue it. Of course, one must be careful and cautious, touching and exploring little by little, to determine the strength of the magical knife's spiritual consciousness and whether he is confident in taking it down. And as a result, it was the invisible discovery of the sword. His soul was indeed very strong, even the spirit of the magic sword was not as strong as it was. The invisible human soul of the sword controls the dragon soul, and the two souls resonate, directly dragging the demon sword soul into the sea of consciousness. Magic knife, right. In the sea of consciousness, the dragon soul holds the struggling sword soul with one dragon claw, while the other dragon claw slaps the blade with its backhand. Enchanting people, right. When the dragon claw made the sword soul roar, and the sword soul suddenly let out a mournful cry. Yeah. Bang. In reality, the moment when the knife invisibly grasps the handle, the demonic sword's evil energy suddenly erupts, tearing apart the bundle, and roaring in the air, even the jade autumn wind is swept away by the wave's 3 steps. Invisible. Yu Qiufeng let out a scream and saw the invisible chi of the sword burst out, with dark green evil rays flashing in his eyes. Creating slaughter, right. When. However, the sword remained oblivious and immersed in the pleasure of beating the demon sword soul. And after eating more than 10 rounds of dragon claw de Baido, Daopa completely withered and dared not roar invisibly at the sword anymore. The howls were full of begging for mercy, completely giving up the struggle and trembling in the dragon claw. The dragon claw holds the soul of the sword, and the invisible hand holds the magic sword, which has completely suppressed and subdued the dark magic sword. Withdraw your hands. At this moment, Yu Qiufeng let out a clear scolding, his long sword unsheathed from his waist, and his back slashed towards the invisible wrist of the sword. However, unlike in countless previous martial arts competitions, Dao Invisible always beats her slowly. This time, the thick and heavy sword used invisibly was as agile as a dagger. With a flick of the wrist, the tip of the Cang Mo Dao had already landed on the back of Yu Qiufeng's sword. With a ding sound, sparks burst out, and Yu Qiufeng felt a strange force, but on the contrary, she almost let go. And this time, the knife was not only faster with just one beat, but also faster with each move. Yu Qiufeng had just reluctantly collected his sword, and the sword had already made a second cut. Ding ding ding. In their breath, the two of them passed more than 10 moves, and Yu Qiufeng was only able to parry and had no fighting ability. Yu Qiufeng was completely stunned, even frightened. It turned out to be a ferocious weapon magic sword that could control her mind. Shoo. After 30 moves, Yu Qiufeng not only had his long sword cut through each gap, but also his coat was cut several times. The situation was already extremely dangerous. Invisible. Wake up. Knowing that she couldn't hold on to any more moves, Yu Qiufeng had no choice but to unleash all her energy and use the ultimate move, Autumn is Riding the Wind. Look for Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com hahaha. Yu Qiufeng, aren't you looking for the Emperor's ultimate technique? The sword pretended to be a demonic and arrogant posture, and then its momentum erupted. The sword is boundless. With a loud roar, a cold light flashes. In an instant, the ultimate move was met. In an instant, more than 10 zhang of sword energy crisscrossed the surroundings, leaving marks one after another. In a moment, the wind stopped and the dust dispersed. The knife is broken. Autumn, autumn breeze. Yu Qiufeng looked at the broken knife in her hand in confusion, feeling the sharpness and coldness on her neck. When the knife struck invisibly, she seemed to have seen death. But in the last moment, the knife invisibly stopped the magic knife, only allowing the blade to touch Yu Qiufeng's skin. Invisible. You're awake. In a moment, Yu Qiufeng finally regained his senses, only to see that the knife was invisibly covered in sweat, with a twisted and struggling expression. Autumn wind, hurry up, let's go. I can't hold on for long. This. Yu Qiufeng took a few steps back and looked at the blade invisible with great concern. Invisible, you quickly abandoned this magic sword. No, this knife is too strong for me to control. Autumn wind, go find Su Huanzhen for help. But. Yu Qiufeng anxiously gazed at Dao Invisible, for a moment, without any usual decisiveness. Don't be fooled. Ah. The knife was so extreme that it pretended to lose control, suddenly erupted and cut out with a single blow. Boom. But the knife turned around invisibly and forced it to cut a groove on the side of Yu Qiufeng's body. Qiufeng, go find Su, it's really true. After speaking, he turned around and walked away, transforming into a dark blue light cluster, with no trace in his breath. Invisible. Yu Qiufeng finally bit her lips hard and flew away in another direction. 8. Control, Slaughter. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Kill. Remember to eat or not, right? Kill. The Cang Mo Dao is still emitting spiritual fluctuations in the hands of Dao Invisible, aiming to stir up the killing and negative emotions in Dao Invisible's heart. It's just that this spiritual fluctuation is so aggrieved, it's so uncomfortable that I feel like crying. If the spirit of the magic blade could speak, it would probably say, Big brother, what can I do? I was born for slaughter, and there is no switch. I am also very desperate. That's also holding it for me. In the sea of consciousness, the sword spirit of Cang Mo Dao is no longer controlled by dragon claws, but is held in the hands of the invisible human soul of the sword. The human soul is the fundamental reason for his innate suppression of the soul and spirit body, and the human soul has stronger suppression power over the sword soul. The human soul can control the dragon soul, and naturally it can also control the sword soul. The human soul can make the dragon soul restrain its breath, and also make the sword soul restrain its spiritual consciousness. Under the suppression of the Dao Invisible soul body, the Cang Mo Dao soul was even more aggrieved as it withdrew its spiritual fluctuations. In reality, the dark and evil magic sword has also regained its breath. The innate magic sword, nurtured from the source of yin to evil, is truly powerful. The sword raised its magic sword invisibly, gently stroking the blade, unable to help but marvel. Although he sharpened the magic knife like his third grandson, it was a sword spirit. The quality of the magic knife itself was even better than that of the strongest divine weapon in the world, the wild leopard thunder blade. And this is just one of the 6 magic swords. The Ghost Yang 6/cutting, which combines the 6 swords, is even more worthy of the invisible anticipation of the sword. And it's not just about sharpness and toughness, the magic sword is born from the source of yin to evil. It's both a sword and a spiritual object, and can naturally absorb the energy of extreme yin, self-warming and nurturing. Of course, its strongest is to absorb killing intent, residual souls, and vitality through slaughter, constantly becoming stronger. However, what becomes stronger is only the magic knife itself. The magic knife cannot enhance the user's physical strength, but can stimulate the user's extreme killing intent, allowing it to explode without reservation. But that's for ordinary users. Dao Invisible is already the true owner of the Cang Mo Dao. He can fully control the ability of the Cang Mo Dao, allowing the extremely yin evil energy accumulated and the killing intent absorbed by the Cang Mo Dao to suddenly erupt when needed, increasing his attack. Dao invisibly estimates that the blessing of a single Cang Mo Dao on him is almost equivalent to the increase in his dragon eye when he cuts open. If he can seize another magic knife, his strength will be significantly improved. However, there is a problem. The Cang magic blade is subject to the invisibility of the blade, but it also belongs to the heavenly mountain in the underworld. This is the heavenly mountain's magic blade, which has the magic to control the movement of the magic blade and even the spirit of the magic blade. In this way, Tianyue can influence the user's thoughts. If the user dies, Tianyue can fully control the user through the magic knife. Not long after Dao Invisible left Xianxia village, he sensed an inexplicable fluctuation and came into contact with the Cang Mo Dao soul, attempting to touch his divine consciousness through the Cang Mo Dao. Cang Mo, you have sealed off the experience of Xianxia village and replied that it was just a warrior who snatched the magic knife. You have had a certain influence on this warrior. Yes, on one hand, there is remote control using magic techniques, and on the other hand, there is a threat from a big BB Do at close range. The Cang Mo Dao soul naturally and honestly follows the invisible instructions of the sword, transmitting spiritual fluctuations to the magic techniques. Not long after, new waves came from within, deepening the influence of the Cang Mo Dao on its users, causing slaughter, and waiting for further instructions. Knife invisibly thinks to oneself, it is necessary to find some training objects and master the use of Cang Mo Dao. His original knife was also thick and heavy, but the straight blade was short, which was conducive to rapid chopping. The Cang Mo Dao had a huge blade, a curved blade, and a sharp edge, requiring greater strength and significant adjustments in its moves. Cang Mo Sword Technique. The sword invisibly controls the sword spirit. With the idea of trying the sword spirit has a feeling and conveys many images to the sword invisibly. That's all from a long time ago. During the process of opening and closing the ghost yang 6 slashes several times, the user of the Cang magic knife used the Cang magic knife to kill. The saber techniques and moves used by the user and the killed were recorded by the Cang devil saber spirit, and then summarized by the martial artists of the Hell's heavenly mountains, taking its essence, to summarize a set of saber techniques that are most suitable for Cang devil saber. And if Dao Invisible uses it for combat, it will also be recorded by Dao Soul. However, this time it is not the observation of the heavenly mountains in the underworld, but rather Dao Invisible's own observation, which allows for a clearer and more authentic understanding of the sword technique. Late at night, the Wuxia open pavilion. Dao invisibly wrapped the Cang Mo Dao in a cloth bag, and disguised himself in a samurai uniform and wearing a bamboo hat. He came to the notice pavilion to search for information. The high price transfer of thriving tea houses, the high price purchase of century-old aged wine, and the high cost of seeking children. The villagers of more than 10 villages, including Xiaoxi village, have been repeatedly robbed by mountain bandits and suffered unbearable hardships, offering a reward of 100 taels of silver to quell them. Dao invisibly found several similar signs that required chivalry, justice, and punishment for evil. He took note of the road map and quietly left. The next day at noon. Big news, big news. The Bawang fortress near Xiaoxi village was slaughtered overnight, and not a single one of the more than 30 bandits survived. I have it too, I have it too. All 17 members of the evil tiger gang in Pinyin town are decapitated. It turns out that the evil tiger gang is actually trafficking children. I don't know which hero is chivalrous and righteous. Humph, I think it's a bloody butcher. He acted too extreme and killed hundreds of lives overnight. How do you know it's a person? This is the farthest case hundreds of miles apart. Find Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com. Of course I know. The leader of the Sea Owl Society is an extremely powerful expert, but he was defeated by the owl leader along with his 8 guardians. Isn't this a super expert? In front of the public pavilion, a large group of onlookers were discussing and arguing about whether the person who caused such terrifying killings was a hero or a demon. Neither a great hero nor a great demon, the blade that wanted to practice swordsmanship was invisible. At this moment, in a forest of mountains, looking at the demonic sword emitting a bloody and evil aura in front of me, my face ached. He originally thought that he had suppressed the magic sword and made the sword's soul completely submit, so he would not be affected by it again. However, he is not a saint, nor is he a virtuous monk. He has 7 emotions and 6 desires, as well as violent impulses. Especially the other is the bloodline of Dao Wuji, flowing with the crazy dragon blood of flame red Lin. His potential violence, upon seeing the blood, was ignited from the bottom of his heart and magnified by the magic sword. He didn't fall into the madness of killing, it was already his tenacious willpower. The sword invisibly traversed hundreds of miles overnight, chopping the heads of hundreds of villains in a row, but there was no boiling blood of a righteous hero, only lingering palpitations in the heart as he walked on the tightrope on the cliff. He must strengthen his willpower and restrain his killing instincts in order not to fall into it. Kill. Kill, you old wood. Shut up. The knife was painfully invisible, but the Cang Mo Dao killed it with pleasure, drinking blood to the fullest, harvesting killing intent, anger, despair, remaining souls, and vitality, as if eating a super feast, completely ecstatic. Angry, the knife held the handle invisibly and pulled the spirit of the demonic sword into the consciousness space. The human soul and dragon soul were on the same level, as if the Bao Long star was pounding the Fong Tang mirror, inflicting a cruel and inhumane blow on it. Sai poor Cang Mo Dao soul, under someone's violence, actually learned to cry. 9. Mantis catching cicadas. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Su Huanjun Sr. Is Su Huanjun Sr. here? Yu Qiufeng, please see me. Amidst the clouds and dust, the weathered light of jade autumn rushes towards us, only to see the leisurely journey of Chu Shirtu brewing tea. It's Miss Yuqiufeng. It's really unfortunate that she went out for some business, but she just left. If you chase her to the southeast, maybe you can catch up. Thank you very much. With a thank you, Yu Qiufeng immediately turned into light and chased southeast. Sword Emperor, you and I are so. Su Huan really didn't go far, because he didn't turn his light on the road, but instead walked with the Chuanliang Sword Emperor Jin Sanglong. Just like in Dao's intangible memory, Jin Sanglong learned that his close friend Zui Qingho had been killed and had a unique wound on his body stained with blood and ice moth. He also learned that Zhou Zongtian was constantly threatening Lady Xian and angrily approached him. However, Zhou Zongtian used a divine weapon stained with blood and ice moth to cut off his sword. So he went to the famous swordsmith Jin Xiling to seek a sword, and received a hint from Jin Xiling that the bowstring of the Bodhi Bao, the heavenly lord's silk, was a divine artifact that could be used to deal with blood-stained ice moths without being harmed by swords. And Tian Juanxi was in Su Huanjun's hands, so Su Huanjun naturally volunteered to help, preparing to work with Jin Sanglong to eradicate the curse of Zhou Zongtian. Senior Su Huanjun, please stay behind. Su Huanjun had just discussed with Jin Sanglong about how to proceed. Just as he was about to turn light and sprint, he heard an urgent call. When he turned around, he saw a figure he had seen before, turning light and arriving. It's Miss Yuqiufeng. Su Huanjun saw Yuqiufeng's anxious expression and asked directly, what happened? Exactly. Yu Qiufeng didn't care much and quickly explained the situation, that's it. Please help my young master, senior. The world's swords are so grateful. Magic knife. Su Huan couldn't help but frown. He had not heard any relevant information, but Yu Qiufeng's words were so serious, indicating the seriousness of the situation. Is there another crisis in the martial arts world? Don't worry, Miss Yu. Su will try his best to help with this matter, but Su also has urgent matters that he can't wait to handle at the moment. Why don't you ask Miss to go find Yi Shaochai first? You can first confirm the whereabouts of young Xia Dao Invisible. After Su finishes dealing with the matter at hand, how about going and helping? The matter of Zhou Zongtian cannot be waited for, because hatred is mutual. Jin Sanglong and Lady Xian hate Zhou Zongtian extremely, and Zhou Zongtian also hates these two people and Zui Qingho. The three of them defeated him and imprisoned him for decades. Now Lady Xian has been persecuted to the brink of collapse by Zhou Zongtian, and the drunken marquis has died. Even if Jin Songlong doesn't go to find Zhou Zongtian will still go to find Jin Songlong. This. Yu Qiufeng knew she was seeking someone and couldn't force them, but she had to first go find Yi Shaochai, then find Dao Invisible who didn't know where she was, and wait until Su Huan really finished. She couldn't wait, Dao Invisible couldn't wait even more. I don't know what the senior wants to do. Although I am light and weak, I feel that my martial arts skills are decent. I am willing to contribute my humble efforts. Can you ask me to help solve this matter as soon as possible? Yu Qiufeng decided to keep a close eye on Su Huanjun. Otherwise, who knows if this wise man from the Central Plains would have completed a major task, with 3 more important ones waiting for him. Miss you, Su is going to target an extremely dangerous person this time. Don't worry, senior. I am not afraid of danger and will never cause trouble for you. Su Huanjun pondered slightly. This jade girl is indeed skilled in martial arts. Even if she can't help, she won't be dragging her feet. Judging from her resolute expression, it's hard to convince her. So, Miss Yu, let's go with us. Thank you very much, senior. On the other side. The autumn wind has reached the clouds and dust. Have you seen Brother Yi? Yuki Yufeng cannot find Dao Invisible, but Dao Invisible can determine Yuki Yufeng's position. As I mentioned before, Dao Invisible has dabbled in various miscellaneous skills such as Yi Bu Xing Xiang, formation mechanisms, Qi Men Dun Jia, and so on. This also includes techniques such as He Luo and Xing Ling, and he knows a little bit about them. Although I haven't learned much and can't be considered profound, I'm not as skilled as a master of magic. However, simple magic tools and techniques such as soul attraction, tracking, and positioning are not a problem. Before, when playing around, the jade hairpin that the sword invisibly gave to Yu Qiufeng contained a simple formation that recorded a tracking and positioning technique, allowing him to grasp Yu Qiufeng's position at any time. After sensing that the jade autumn wind had reached the clouds and dust, Dao Invisible set off again. His willpower training did not yield much effect, and it was not achieved overnight. But fortunately, he was not a bloodthirsty person, nor did he taste the beauty of slaughter. After a period of meditation, he eliminated the impact of slaughter. As long as he no longer takes the initiative to kill, he will not be infected with killing intent again. Dao followed invisibly all the way to a dense forest near the seaside. When he arrived, there was already a rapid metallic roar coming from the forest, and sword energy was surging. It was obvious that 2 swordsmanship masters were fighting here. He completely suppressed the Cang Mo Dao, preventing it from emitting any fluctuations, and infused his soul body with his martial arts body without emitting any breath. He quietly sneaked into the forest, and soon sensed the spiritual fluctuations of the nearby jade autumn wind. Yu Qiufeng was nervously watching the battle between Zhou Zongtian and Jin Songlong. Jin Songlong is skilled in wielding double swords, with both offensive and defensive techniques. He wields freely and meticulously, making him a legendary figure in the sword world. And Zhou Zongtian's sword moves are dangerous and fierce. He seeks the Shuyuan website www.zhaoshuyuan.com, which is treacherous and poisonous. His moves are deadly, and he is worthy of being one of the 3 major villains from a long time ago. The 2 enemies were extremely jealous when they met, and they all unleashed their full strength without reservation. With hundreds of moves, Yu Qiufeng's palms were covered in cold sweat. She only then realized that she underestimated the heroes of the world. Not to mention her strength, it was her father and brother. Compared to Jin Songlong and Zhou Zongtian, there was an undeniable gap, and only the sword was boundless, with the ability to surpass these 2 people. Yu Qiufeng was both shocked and ashamed. With this skill, she couldn't help in such a level of battle. Only when the 4 celebrities formed the 4-elephant knife formation can she fight against such a master. On the other hand, Dao Invisible was also secretly observing the top-notch battle in the sword world. His vision and strength were much higher than those of Yu Qiufeng, and he could more accurately judge the strength of these two people. Jin Songlong and Zhou Zongtian are both top-notch experts on the table today, with slightly stronger abilities than Yu Bufan. Moreover, Zhou Zongtian also has the strongest divine weapon of the moment, blood-stained ice moth. The blade has an intangible feeling. If you were to fight against Zhou Zongtian, you would have to use the heavenly magic blade and open the dragon's eye to have a steady victory. And as he watched the battle and pondered the swordsmanship of the two, comparing it with his own swordsmanship, the battle between the two reached its most intense climax. Jin Songlong and Zhou Zongtian fought against each other in several moves, but ultimately feared the sharpness of the blood-stained ice moth. Zhou Zongtian seized the opportunity in a move cut through his arm, splattering blood on the spot. Jin Songlong, your life is at rest. But when Zhou Zongtian was about to unleash his ultimate moves with all his might. Zhou Zongtian, don't be reckless. Su Huanzhen suddenly appeared, shook the dust, looked at Zhou Zongtian disdainfully, and said calmly, you should have surrendered. Su Zhenzhen, you're damn it. 10. The yellow spring is behind. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ah. Zhou Zongtian didn't know that Su was really calculating. With a brainless sword, he stabbed and found that the blood-stained ice moth was tightly bound by an invisible force. A divine weapon that cuts iron like mud, but cannot harm the heavenly lord's silk at all. Su Huanzhen firmly tied the blood-stained ice moth with heavenly lord's silk, followed by a palm blast to fly Zhou Zongtian, and the blood-stained ice moth let go. Jin Songlong then threw out a sword aura, and Zhou Zongtian fell to the ground with serious injuries. Tianjun silk. The sword observed in the dark was invisible, and his eyes flickered. This divine object restrained all the divine weapons and weapons in the world. In his memory, even the ghost yang 6 slashes cannot harm Tianjun silk at all. This is something he must pay attention to. What a righteous Su Huanzhen, what an upright Jin Songlong. Zhou Zongtian is dying, which can be considered as broadening his horizons. Zhou Zongtian knew in his heart that his hatred towards Jin Songlong would never cease, and even as death approached, his mouth remained firm enough. Zhou Zongtian, how many innocent and virtuous people have you killed? To avoid more sacrifices, you cannot blame me. However, Jin Songlong was indeed a straightforward hero. If it was for personal revenge, he would kill Zhou Zongtian, but it was a decisive battle in a dignified manner. Now that he has conspired with others to subdue Zhou Zongtian, he has only destroyed Zhou Zongtian's physical and mental abilities with one palm. So, really what do you mean? This is the seniors' grudges, it's up to the seniors to make the decision. Let him live and die on his own. After speaking, Jin Songlong didn't take a glance at Zhou Zongtian anymore and left with Su Huanzhen. However, Zhou Zongtian's laughter was only malicious, without despair. Jin Songlong, do you think this is the end? You are delusional. After speaking, he took out a pill from his pocket. This elixir is the main reason for the 100 battles technique of Fengling Island, and the mysterious mechanism diagram records the method of refining the elixir of immortality. The mechanism diagram was finally collected by Desire Sky and Ghost Hidden, successfully refining the elixir of immortality. One of them was given to the side of Ghost Hidden in the 100 battles technique, as agreed, for the fierce battle. And the war was a disciple of Zhou Zongtian, who tried every means to obtain the elixir of immortality from the war. This pill can not only bring life back to life, but also help people recover their physical and mental health, or make great progress in their physical and mental health. As long as Zhou Zongtian takes the pill, he can return to his original state. No, he will become even more terrifying, he will become the eternal nightmare of Golden Songlong and Purple Yen. But when Zhou Zongtian was thinking of even more malicious revenge, about to deliver the pill into his mouth, the faint blue blade flickered, like the spring breeze brushing the hair. gently caressing Zhou Zongtian's neck. Zhou Zongtian instantly stiffened and remained motionless. Following, a handsome figure with a dark magic sword on his back appeared beside Zhou Zongtian. His slender fingers pinched the elixir, only to find that Zhou Zongtian was still tightly holding on to this thread of vitality. "Senior, as a despicable villain like you, eating rice is a waste. Don't waste such precious things, right?" Before he could finish speaking, Zhou Zongtian's head flew up, his eyes still filled with shock and anger, but his fingers finally let go of their last hope. "I am not willing to accept it." Silent and invisible, the sole consciousness of the knife sensed an extremely venomous roar. Zhou Zongtian's unwillingness made him unable to rest and transform into an evil spirit. At the same time, a spiritual body flew out of Zhou Zong's celestial body, rapidly shooting towards the distance. Dao Invisible didn't care about that spiritual body, he knew what it was. It was a person killed by Zhou Zongtian, who was the gatekeeper of the evil ghost tower. Its spiritual body was the key to opening the evil ghost tower, and it involved too much, not something Dao Invisible needs to care about now. He just looked at the evil soul that Zhou Zongtian had just condensed, and rushed towards him with his teeth and claws open, his face full of interest, and his heart without any fluctuation. The spirit of the demonic sword, which is extremely mean and evil, is invisibly pounded by the sword to the point of being immortal and dying. Only a newly formed evil spirit, relying on the resentment before death, is rare enough to make a move. He squinted his eyes and recognized the roar of the dragon soul in the sea, creating an invisible wave. However, for Zhou Zongtian, it was like a heavy weight weighing 10,000 pounds, and he was immediately pinned to the ground, becoming a lying bastard, unable to move a single finger. Let go of me. Okay." The knife was invisibly obedient and effortless, releasing its soul sense pressure. However, when Zhou Zongtian just floated up, another pressure pressed him to the ground. Stop it. And this time, the knife invisibly released a stronger pressure, completely enveloping and squeezing Zhou Zongtian, and pressing his humanoid soul into a ball. "Watch me sing and dance. Stop it. Please stop. Please, stop it." Zhou Zongtian's evil soul completely withered after being dribbled invisibly by the knife. "Aren't you coming yet?" Dao Wuwu finally stopped and grabbed Zhou Zongtian's soul with one hand, waiting for something. In his memory, Zhou Zongtian took the elixir of immortality and had just regained his physical fitness when the yellow spring knife borrowed his life from heaven to take Zhou Zongtian's dog head. After suppressing Zhou Zongtian's evil soul, although it was a struggle, he also ordered the Cang Mo Dao spirit to stimulate Zhou Zongtian's spiritual consciousness and amplify his malicious fluctuations. In order to make the yellow spring knife borrow its life from heaven to perceive. Sure enough, in just a moment, the knife could hear a sound of hooves coming from a horse. But it's not coming from far to near, gradually becoming clear, but rather fluctuating, unable to lock its position, unsure of where it is. But it doesn't matter. The invisible soul consciousness of Dao had already sensed a malicious intent that was countless times more terrifying than the evil soul of Zhou Zongtian, and a deadly aura of yin and evil had locked in Zhou Zongtian's evil soul. Suddenly, the malice erupted, and dozens of feet away, an inexplicably terrifying undead knight appeared. The knight had a terrifying appearance, devoid of any human breath, and his mount was a zombie horse constantly flowing with decaying sap. In the hand of the knight, he found the book Garden www.zhaosuiyuan.com and held a long-handled sharp knife, emitting a sinister ghost aura, making the knight like a god of death, harvesting life. However, when the knight appeared, he saw the body of Zhou Zongtian with a strange head and the evil soul that had shrunk into a ball, and was clearly stunned. As a result, the terrifying aura of the undead began to dissipate and they were about to leave directly. Why rush to leave? With no one left, even evil spirits can bear half of the bill. The sword invisibly waited for this knight. How could this magic sword make him run away? Suddenly, He infused a dark and evil aura of the dark magic sword into the evil soul of Zhou Zongtian in his hand and threw it at the undead knight. The 6 magic swords fight against each other to determine the strongest sword and become the stronger ghost Yang's 6 slashes. The magic swords will attract each other and will never stop seeing each other, unless the heavenly mountain in the underworld controls their actions. The aura of the Cang Mo Dao and the scent of the evil spirit's soul really caught the attention of the Huangquan Dao. He borrowed his life from heaven and turned his horse's head to leave, but suddenly turned around and chopped it off. Ah! Zhou Zongtian's evil soul let out a desperate scream, and was cut in half by the yellow spring knife and absorbed. That's right now. The Yulan sword flashed with a flash, and the blade was invisible. The person followed the blade and cut towards the sky, borrowing their life. Borrow your life from heaven and immediately counterattack, without avoiding or flashing, with a backhand stab towards the invisible face of the sword. Borrowing life from heaven is the resurrection of corpses, who are not afraid of knives, axes, and chops. When using a move, it is a strategy of mutual destruction. You're called a playboy. The sword let out an invisible scream, but it couldn't really borrow its life from the heavens to exchange swords. It could only change its moves midway and block the attack of the yellow spring blade. And this undoubtedly makes borrowing life from heaven even more severe, and the more fierce attack towards the blade is invisible. Invisible. Be careful.